Hey everyone, welcome back to OT Rex. Today's video is going to be an overview on ADHD, and this is a neurodevelopmental disorder that can be diagnosed as early as age 2 or later on in life in adulthood. The main symptoms for ADHD include trouble paying attention, controlling impulsive behaviors, as well as being overly active. I found some really great research on the CDC website for statistics and data on ADHD, and I will link this below. So, this shares a lot of information about how common ADHD diagnoses are, and also that boys are more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD than girls. So, it's 12.9% for boys compared to 5.6% for girls. In addition to this, ADHD is commonly diagnosed with other conditions. So, 5 out of 10 children with ADHD also have a behavior or conduct problem, as well as 3 out of 10 children with ADHD having anxiety. So, there's a lot of research showing that other conditions affect children with ADHD, including depression, autism spectrum disorder, as well as Tourette syndrome. And as OTs, this is very important since we work on a lot of emotional regulation and sensory processing difficulties that are related to these other conditions. And this is a really nice chart to break down some of those comorbidities and other conditions that children with ADHD present with. This is very helpful and relevant information, especially to pediatric OTs, since a lot of the population that we work with may have autism and, in addition to that, may have anxiety or ADHD. Several of my children who I work with present with multiple conditions or symptoms, so this is really helpful for us to know to better treat the child. Some of you may not know this, but there are actually multiple types of ADHD, and everyone who has ADHD can present differently depending on which presentation is more active. So, the first one is inactive presentation, which means that they have difficulty organizing their thoughts and finishing tasks. Makes it hard for them to pay attention and follow a conversation. And then there's another type called hyperactive impulsive presentation. And this type presents with a lot of fidgeting. They tend to talk a lot and have difficulty sitting still. And overall, they have very restless behavior. There's also a third type, which is a combined presentation, which basically combines 1 and 2 as stated above. Presentation can also change with age. So a child may present with one type, and then as they get older, they might show more of like a combined presentation or maybe switch to the opposite type. So there are 3 different types here. Based on current research, the cause is linked to genetic factors, and there is a common myth that eating too much sugar is a cause of ADHD, but that is not currently backed up by research. And there are also some risk factors such as brain injury, alcohol and tobacco use during pregnancy, or other environmental factors during pregnancy, as well as low birth weight or premature delivery. I'm not going to go too in depth with the diagnosis process, but you would have to go to a primary care provider or a psychologist or psychiatrist to get an evaluation for ADHD. They will follow the qualifications on the DSM to see if you have a certain amount of symptoms for the different types of ADHD. So, this is just an example from the CDC website for the predominantly inattention based ADHD. So, it says 6 or more symptoms of inattention for children ages up to age 16, or 5 or more for adolescents age 17 years and older. So they have very specific qualifications that you need to meet in order to get this diagnosis, and it's going to be slightly different depending on the type of ADHD and also the child's age. Treatments for ADHD include behavior therapy as well as medication, and oftentimes it's a combination of those two that really help support someone with ADHD. Training with caregivers, if the child is young, is a huge benefit, of course, so that they know what to do. And a lot of it is lifestyle changes, which is very OT. So, eating healthy and sleeping well are always going to be two important factors in keeping someone well regulated and healthy. But when we think about someone's diet, and if we have like a lot of difficulty with attention or high energy and restlessness, we want to make sure that the person is eating well, getting enough of their proteins, and having a well balanced diet. Obviously, getting exercise is good for everyone. It helps people get into a good routine and find healthy outlets to get exercise as well as organize their bodies. So, physical activity is a must, and also decreasing screen time is helpful as well. Now that we've talked about some treatment options for people with ADHD, I wanted to include some OT strategies and intervention. So, time management and executive functioning skills are really burdened when someone has ADHD because organizing and thinking clearly for like activities with sequencing and steps can be very difficult. So, we want to help provide strategies to target these areas. So, if we're working with school age kids, then it's going to be things like organizing their backpack for school or helping them get in a good routine with their schedule. So, lists and schedules and helping them prioritize their homework or their daily chores through visual schedules or lists, whatever strategies works for them is something that we can help that they can use at home with their caregivers as well. And you can also do this for things like morning routines or things that they commonly do, like they might need one for preparing for travel, like what do I need to get into my luggage bag in order to do this and not forget anything. So we can give some generic strategies to help with organization, and then they can carry it over and adapt it to whatever situation they need. And sensory adaptations are really helpful as well. So, this is going to help improve focus. There's a great research study on how yoga balls used as chairs in classrooms actually increases focus. So, children can use those adaptations if their classrooms allow it, and utilizing these at home will be helpful, such as wiggle cushions, as well as just other sensory activities because we're giving the person movement and physical activity to assist with focusing. Emotional regulation is also difficult. A lot of times, people with ADHD also can have difficulties with anger. So, we can kind of show different coping strategies just to help them regulate themselves and work through the frustration of not understanding a task or getting overwhelmed with organizing their mindset to complete a task. So just imagine how frustrating that must be when you're trying to work on something and you can't think clearly, or it's really hard to get the task done correctly, and there's a lot of embarrassment and self-esteem involved as well. Depending on the age group that you're working with, you will have to adapt a lot of these strategies and activities. So, obviously, if you're working with a young adult with ADHD, you're not necessarily going to be working on as much of the school focused strategies. It might be more geared towards high school or college, or even maintaining a work school schedule if they're working. So, you will have to adapt, but the examples I have are mainly for pediatrics since that's my area of specialty. And some of my favorite activities to do with my little ones are obstacle courses with verbal directions. So you can do a multi step activity, and I like to make them wait and listen to my directions or write it on a board and have them work on sequencing those steps. So you might phase it out by first giving them a visual or a list to follow and then phasing out the list, or you can change the steps slightly after every round so that they really have to focus on engaging and listening to use that working memory to remember the steps. Another great strategy to use is analog clocks and timers, and I like to play kind of a game called How Long Will This Take? Especially with my slightly older kids who are maybe 8 or 9 and they have difficulty organizing their thoughts, but they are, understanding of clocks and timers. So we'll use this strategy and talk about activities we plan on doing or activities they do regularly at home and compare time together for them to have a better understanding of time. A lot of times, people with ADHD lose track of time easily or don't realize how long something is taking. So I'll compare things like your favorite show is Avatar. How long is an episode of Avatar? And, it's like 25 minutes. Then how long do you think that this activity is going to take compared to sitting and watching an episode of your favorite show? Or how long do you think it's been since we've done this activity? So it makes them really think about and be aware of how much time has passed, and also give them opportunities to compare activities they do regularly with new activities and think about how much time has passed. So we kind of have fun with that. And having an analog clock that they can visually see in the room that they're working in also allows them to keep track of time. And using timers can also help them realize, wow, this took me a lot longer than I thought, or that actually went faster than I thought. So those are a few ways to utilize OT strategies during intervention and also collaborate with caregivers and family to really help the child thrive in their home and school environment as much as possible. I hope this video was helpful for you guys, and I hope you guys are all doing well. Take care, and I'll see you next time.